Thank you. Welcome back, everyone, to this sort of queer look that we're doing to close the workshops of the evening. For me, one of the things that arises from the book of Ruth is the queerness of the story. And some of you have heard me talk about this before, and I focused on the story of Ruth and Naomi in my senior thesis for rabbinical school, and about the use of their Ruth's vow as a wedding vow. So as you know, I've got a lot to say about that, but I want to do something maybe a little bit more metaphysical tonight. But we're going to start with a chant. And this is a chant from the first book of Samuel. It's in the chat. And some of you know this. Atzila used to do this with us. It had a little hand motion that went with it. And it goes like this. It says, here is Adonai between you and me, forever. Hine ya beni uvencha, hine ya beni uvencha, ad olam, ad olam, hine ya beni uvencha, hine ya beni uvencha, ad olam, ad olam, hine ya beni uvencha, hine ya beni uvencha, ad olam, ad olam, hine ya beni uvencha, hine ya beni uvencha, ad olam, ad olam, hine ya beni uvencha, hine ya beni uvencha, ad olam, ad olam, ad olam, ad olam. So thank you all for being here. Whoa! There's always that last little bit as the last air is exhaled from the diaphragm of the shruti box. So tonight I wanted to do something queer, but I want to do something that's not. For some people, it feels like the project of a queer look at Torah is, let's identify who in Torah is queer. And that's kind of the nature of the inquiry. And I want to do something a little bit more than that. I want us to queer time. I want us to queer historicity. And I'm gonna lead you through this a little bit. But the idea here is that, in the first session, we were talking about, something came up speculating about Ruth and Naomi. And the idea was like, well, no, that's anachronistic. So what I want to do is collapse this. I want to dissolve this idea of anachronism and identify all of us, queer, not queer, however people identify, but as having a living present-day relationship with the text of Torah. The Torah is alive and we are alive, and we are not just recipients of it, but we are in dialogue with it. That what we see in Torah, we see because it's there. And we trust we see it because it's there. We don't have to prove something. So for instance, when I was a kid, I always felt something about the story of Joseph. And you know that I've studied and have lots of specific queer things to say about Joseph, but I didn't have that when I was a kid. When I was a kid, there was just something about Joseph, maybe about the coat, the stripy coat, maybe about the terrible abusive brothers. I don't have terrible abusive brothers, but I was a queer kid living under threat of bullying, and sometimes under actuality of bullying. There was something about Joseph that jumped out at me. And it turns out it's true. And not because if you dig, Joseph becomes a gay kid in Torah. Although maybe Joseph does become a gay kid in Torah. But because I see it, it makes it so. The story plants a seed. The story asks a question, offers a possibility. And then I, in relationship to the story, in dialogue with it, I respond and ask my own question. And then the text responds back. So I'm going to start with, I think I'll do a screen share of this. Let's see. I'm looking for preview. Here we go. This was what we just sang. I want to read you this beautiful quote, and you don't have to stare at the words. I'm going to read it to you aloud, so you can also lean back and receive this. This is from a book by Zohar Wyman Kelman, who's a queer academic in Israel, from a book called Queer Expectations, A Genealogy of Jewish Women's Poetry. Some of you who come to Yiddish Tish, we've done a little bit with this book. I want to read you this piece about what is the queer dialogue that happens across time. And Zohar is talking about poems, but I think we could use it to mean the biblical text. They say, these poems have awaited the reader, her archival work, her queer desire. She, the reader, has the task of bringing this call and response into being, thus queerly joining it. My ability to join this history derives from what academic Carolyn Dinshaw defines as the queer historical impulse, which simultaneously seeks to historicize and to reach cross-temporally. You'll see what this means. The drive towards historicism is derived from the fact that what is considered queer is dependent on the norms of each given time and place. In this sense, queerness is a relation to a norm, a relation that can be historicized and traced across time, to follow Dinshaw. In other words, Ruth and Naomi might be queer not because they are lovers. They might be queer because they took agency as unmarried women who are women who are unprotected by any of the patriarchal structures. They were outside of the form. They were outside of the authorized norms of their time. So their story becomes a queer story without reference to sexuality. So to repeat, in this sense, queerness is a, quote, relation to a norm, a relation that can be historicized and traced across time, to follow Dinshaw. Dinshaw's understanding of queerness thus generates a historical awareness that is deeply embedded in individual disparate times. In other words, each time, queerness might be different in different historical times. At the same time, the queer historical impulse is based on the possibility of moving across time, allowing past and present to pleasurably touch. The need To define a relation to norms in time forces me to simultaneously historicize my own time and the time of the historical subjects I turn to, placing the queer both in the past and in the present. Yet it is also, and that's what we would expect of historians, right? Yet it is also an anti-historicist endeavor where the very idea of connection across time undermines the separation between past and present, undoing notions of linear progression. I'm going to read that again. Yet it is also an anti-historicist endeavor where the very idea of connection across time undermines the separation between past and present, undoing notions of linear progression. Anachronistically moving between disparate historical groundings, queer time undermines binary separation between past and present. Say that again. Queer time undermines binary separation between past and present, undoing linear, teleological, and progressive notions of history. That's a lot of academic language. But the idea is that your relationship to a text, like as a queer person looking for queerness, you approach it, that you have two approaches and their intention with each other. One is identifying what would be queer in that time. What would that look like? And it might not look like what queer means to me. But the other way is if it looks queer to me, it's queer. If it relates to, if in my experience, it raises those flags for me, then it's there because I am bringing this, and the text and I touch. The text and I are in dialogue. And that's the invitation I would like to give as we look at a couple of these texts, is not just let's look back and see what it was back then, but to notice how these texts from Torah land in us and what we give back. Rita Losh, I don't know if you're still in the room, but in the first session when you talked about, but what about marriage? What about polyamory? What about this and this? In Zohar Wyman Kelman's view of queer time, then as soon as you see that question, then the question exists. The question doesn't just exist for us. The question exists in the text. Okay, hope that wasn't too unintelligible. Is it too unintelligible? Okay, thank you. I have Leah Goldman Miller here as my coach.
It's also what you said about we were all at Sinai. It relates to that too.
It does. It's very much in keeping with we were all at Sinai. Not that that Sinai continues to exist. Rita?
Yeah, as a writer, I was very pleased to hear what you just said, because it reminded me, though I'm always aware of this, that you've got the writer and then you've got the text, but it's not complete until there's a reader, and the reader does participate in the text. That's very cool, and that makes Torah very personalized too.
That's right. Torah is waiting for you, Rita, to read it, right?
Oh, I know.
That wasn't a scold. Read more Torah, but Torah plants a seed, and Torah relies on you, on all of us, to be the readers and to establish that relationship. So when I see Jonathan and David, I don't have to prove it up that there's something queer going on here. If I feel it, if I see it, then it's there. I'm not, and of course there's a question of what is it I'm trying to do. If I'm a historian trying to understand what were the norms of biblical times, then no, I see it, I feel it, therefore it's there is not enough. But if what I'm doing is being in relationship with Torah, in living relationship with text, then it has a life and I have a life and we talk to each other. Rita?
Me again? Okay,
That's you
briefly.
again.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not tooting my own horn here, but I had a very rich year of writing a piece, a prose poem, in response to each of the Torah portions, the 54 Torah portions. And because I'm queer, not homosexually, but just queer, idiosyncratic, as I presume everyone else is, but I don't know because I live entirely in my own self. I'm sorry, I'm going off topic here. Uh, oh, oh, yeah, that like the strongest parts of Torah for me were like the very queer scene of a talking donkey who made so much more sense than any of the humanoids in that story. And that just seemed really so I guess what I'm saying is you can be a very queer.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, well,
I endeavor to do so whenever I can. Um, I'm going to share one more uh, with you just before we launch into looking at a couple of the texts, if you don't mind. This is from an academic. I can also put this on the screen. Back onto the screen. Where was it? This is from Jeffrey Kripal, who's is a kind of revolutionary historian of religion, and he quotes Elliot Wolfson, who is a Kabbalah scholar. So this is also about the bendiness of time. Okay, the bendiness of time. So Kripal says, time, it turns out, can be ruptured, and no historical causality, and so no historical criticism is absolute. And no such observation is ahistorical, a criticism that is sometimes articulated when we arrive at this point. Such positions do, however, work with a much more expanded sense of time and history. In some very real sense, the position is superhistorical, with history now understood as a kind of hyperdimensional process that simply does not work and has never worked in just one way or in just 3 or 4 dimensions. In Wolfson's, that's Elliot Wolfson's more careful terms, this is, quote, a time in which the past remains present to the future, in which the future is already present to the past, just as the notes of a musical phrase, though played successively, nevertheless persist altogether in the present and thus for a phrase. And here's Wolfson again, now approvingly quoting scholar Henry Corbin, quote, nights and days, hours and minutes are simply means of determining the measure of time, but these measurements are not time itself. In itself, time is the limit of the persistence of the eternal form on the surface of the accidental matter of this world. I'm going to give you that one again. Nights and days, hours and minutes are simply means of determining the measure of time. But these measurements are not time itself. In itself, time is the limit of the persistence of the eternal form on the surface of the accidental matter of this world. That is difficult to understand and paradoxical to our little temporally bound minds. Exactly. So, there's also, I'll say, there's also a certain piece of ahistoricity is present even in our Jewish exegetical methodologies. So the rabbis who would be the commentators who were interpreting Torah had one of their phrases in Torah one of their principles in Torah interpretation was Ein mukdam umeuchar baTorah. Okay, the question mark. Sorry, Rita. What's the question?
No, you're really stretching my gray matter.
Okay, good. Stay
That's good.
Look, it's also late at night, so like
Yeah.
receiving this in dream space is also a reasonable way to receive things that are highly paradoxical. Okay, so the rabbi said in interpreting Torah, "Ein mukdam u'meuchar b'Torah." There is no early and late in Torah. They would say that in response to like if there were objection, but why are we saying Abraham kept kosher when the laws of kosher weren't yet given until the time of Moses? And the rabbis would say, Ein mukdam u'meuchar b'Torah. In other words, there's a way that you can read the story. You can read the time as not being linear, but somehow being, as Dr. Who would say, a wibbly wobbly, timey wimey ball of something. I forgot what he says. A ball of wibbly wobbly, timey wimey. That somehow only from one perspective, from one vantage point, does time work like this. But from another vantage point, let's say time runs like this from here. But if you're up here looking down, you see all of it. You can engage with all of it. So anyway, I'm not a theoretician on this, but it's something I've been reading a lot about lately and been feeling very moved and excited about because it comports with my experience. Some of my, like, why have I spent so much time with Joseph? Why did I have an instinct around Joseph and then start doing all this research that, all of this counting up of words of how many times the word for womb, the rechem word, appears in Torah, and how many of those apply to Joseph, right? Like, what was it that made me say, I want to know this? And then I did it. And then I found things that reinforced what my instinct was. Now, this happens to me in a variety of ways. It's not just with text. It sometimes happens with my particular propensity toward coincidence or of noticing things that seem to be presenting themselves for me to notice. I think because this is an experience I have, and I have I've developed, even though I'm still a novice at it, but I've developed a certain sense of like when my body is saying, notice this. Like that also happens in relation to text or in relation to particular commentators on text or other stuff. So it's with this idea that we are in relationship with Ruth and Naomi and Jonathan and David and Joseph and the other queers of Torah that I want us to enter into this conversation. That this is not a, oh, gee whiz, look at what things were like then. It's also, what are Ruth and Naomi saying to us now? What do we bring into our relationship with Ruth and Naomi? Well, we have plenty of experience with relationships between women. We have lots of relationship with outsiderness. We have lots of relationship with migration. We have lots of relationship with climate refugees. We have relationship with family structures that don't have a name. And this is what we bring to them. This is our offering to them. It's not just us perfecting our understanding or getting a hit of insight. It's also, if we're serious about this ahistoricity, if we're serious about sort of the non-linearity of time, then we're also bringing, as the Kreipel quote was, the present the future is present in the past. Like, we're present for Ruth and Naomi. We're present to say to them, you're going to be okay. We see you in a different way, and it's a way that's going to give you strength. We have an ability to heal Torah from where we sit now, and not just be recipients of Torah who hopefully will be healed by Torah, but sometimes will be appalled by Torah. We also have the ability to offer healing. Okay. Let's look at a few texts. And we'll see how that goes. Because I also am excited about finding the queer texts and sharing the texts that feel popularly queer, or at least to me feel queer. Okay, so we'll start with Ruth and Naomi. We already, numerous times tonight, we have read their vow. Ruth refusing to be parted from Naomi. And she says to her these words. I'm going to say them in Hebrew because they're beautiful in Hebrew. Ki el asher telchi elech, uva asher talini alin, amech ami velohaich Elohai, ba'asher tamuti amut v'sham ekaver. Where you go, wherever you go, I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. As many of you know, I use this for wedding vows frequently. And Oren and I used it for our wedding vow in 2008 and 4 years earlier at City Hall, San Francisco. There's a completeness to this. I mean, yes, again, you could look at this and say, oh, she's just pledging to her mother-in-law because she loves her and she's in grief and all those kinds of things. And all of that is also true. And there is something so deeply love-filled and complete about this. I will journey with you. I will live with you. I will share family with you. I will share spirituality with you. And I will die with you too. I don't have at my disposal in my Jewish toolbox a wedding vow that is more complete and more moving than that. Okay, so Ruth, and you could also say, yeah, and it's one way. Like Naomi doesn't vow this back, right? So there's that too. I don't want to, in other words, in doing this, notice what you notice, what you feel, what you bring to it. And also we don't have to romanticize it. It's, Ruth offers this. Ruth offers this particular surrender to Naomi. Naomi doesn't offer it back. But they also say in every relationship, there is the kisser and the kissee. And then together, they, as outsiders, as people who no longer are part of any patriarchal structure, they move back to Bethlehem, and slowly they find their way back into a structure through Boaz. There's more legal complexity around the concept of levirate marriage, which is that if a husband dies before he and his wife have a child, his next brother is required to marry her next available brother, and then the first child is considered his child, his heir, and not the heir of the living brother. And there's something there that even though this is a particular legal structure that's built to maintain a man's legacy, patriarchal legacy, there's also there's something queer about it also, in that it honors a symbolic, it creates a lineage that is not genetic. It honors an intention over biology. And so that's something that interests me. Similarly, late in the story, once we're at the happy ending, although not all commentators see it as happy ending. We'll read some poetry tomorrow in-house with Barbara that really doesn't like the end of the book of Ruth. But just from what I bring from my biography, my life as the Haftarah to this Torah, we have here. So Boaz took Ruth as his wife. He went into her, and Adonai caused her to conceive, and she bore a son. The women said to Naomi, "Blessed be Adonai, who has not left you this day without a redeemer." And redeemer here, goel, is a particular legal term having to do with that levirate marriage system. God has not left you this day without a redeemer. May his name be famous in Israel. He shall be to you a restorer of your life and a nourisher of your old age, for your daughter-in-law who loves you, who is better to you than 7 sons, has borne him. I feel like there's something missing in the English. Anyway.
Who's the he?
Has borne the baby. Naomi took the child and laid him in her bosom and became his nurse. This is the word omenet. It's the same word that, it's the same role, the same title that Mordechai has with respect to Esther. And the women of the neighborhood gave him a name, saying, and this is the piece that always grabs me, Yulad ben Naomi. A son has been born to Naomi. Not a son has been born to Ruth. Not a son has been born to Boaz. A son has been born to Naomi. That somehow the relationship forged by Ruth and Naomi through that bond at the beginning of the story creates a kinship that is recognized by the women of the neighborhood. They all know how babies are born. They all know this baby did not come out of Naomi, but they say a baby has been born to Naomi. There's something in that is, when I bring myself to this story, there's something queer about that, because I have seen in my own family, and this occurs also often in adoptive families, that it doesn't matter what we say about what our kinship is. There will be people that will say, oh, but I mean, who's really the father? Or who's really the mother? Right? People will doubt, people will not accept what you say about the structure of your family. And this is something, that we've faced over the now 30 years that we've had a complicated family. We've always been pretty clear, and there will always be people who will want to know what the real story is. So there's something very beautiful here about we hear that Boaz went into Ruth, she conceived, she gave birth to a child, and the women of the neighborhood say, a child has been born to Naomi. For me, this is a moment where I bring my life to the story, and the story gives me comfort. The story speaks back to me and says, sometimes people can get it right, that families like yours appear here. Is it a family like mine? It is in this particular dialogue I'm having with the text. Rita?
Yeah, somebody said, who is he? And it got me to thinking about this story. I can't exactly see the queerness in it myself, but so the husband's brother's child is the husband's child and the brother's child, and the mother is not the mother, but the other mother is sort of the mother. Well, that's mighty queer.
I have nothing to say back. Barbara?
Well, I was the one who said, who's the he?
Oh, okay.
Because I found myself thinking of he as Adonai, but also he as Boaz.
Oh.
And it works interestingly both ways.
He shall be
to you a restorer of your life and a nourisher of your old age. That could be the husband of your daughter-in-law, but it could also be Adonai through his intercession, because Adonai is the one who is the motivating factor behind Boaz.
Yeah.
And makes it possible for Boaz to take Ruth as wife. So it just is lovely to see it both ways.
Absolutely. That's beautiful reading. Thank you, Barbara. That's beautiful reading, beautiful close reading of this text. You don't know who the he is. It could be Adonai. Blessed be Adonai, who has not left you this day without a redeemer. May his name, not the redeemer, but God's name, be famous in Israel. He, God, shall be to you a restorer of your life and a nourisher of your old age. Beautiful, beautiful. Someone.
This is a lovely companion for the pieces that I have for tomorrow.
Yes, yeah, there's a bunch more Ruth and Naomi coming tomorrow. Some beautiful poems in English from Barbara and some Yiddish poems through me. I want to hit on Jonathan I don't want to hit on, well, maybe I do. Want to hit on Jonathan and David because it's famous. Were they lovers? Weren't they lovers? So I just want to, I want to say this is another one of those places where kind of the text speaks for itself. I mean, this is one where even if you're looking at it historically and doing that piece that is this queer at the time, feels to me like, yeah, probably. David shows up, David shows up. He's just killed Goliath. And here, when David finished speaking with Saul, Jonathan's soul, the nefesh Yehonatan nikshera benefesh David, Jonathan's soul became bound up with the soul of David. Jonathan loved David as himself. And then Jonathan and David made a pact because Jonathan loved him as himself. So, I feel like, this isn't one where we have to do much guessing. That Torah tells us. Torah tells us exactly how much Jonathan loves David. This is another one where we're not as certain if David loves Jonathan back as much, but we certainly get Jonathan's devotion here. A little bit later, Jonathan says to David, "Ma tomar nafshecha aselach." Whatever your soul desires, I will do it for you. And then they swear another pact. Let's see, where he swears that he'll save David by sending a message. Who is shamashing? Is that Cindy?
It's me.
Oh, hi, Roe.
Oh,
Somewhere there's a link for this document if people want to download it and look at it later. And if you can find that, maybe somebody else can help you. I think I put it in the text thread before you were here. Okay. Hang on. Yeah, so he promises to do that. May I be with you. This is a pact between my house and your house forever. Thus has Jonathan covenanted with the house of David, and may Adonai call David's enemies to account. Jonathan, out of his love for David, swore again, for he loved him as himself. So again, we have that. And then we have this, as for the promise we made to each other, may Adonai be, the word witness we supply in English to try to make sense of the sentence, but the sentence in Hebrew is just, may Adonai be between you and me forever. And that's pretty much the same oath gets repeated 19 verses later. May Adonai be between you and me and between your offspring and mine forever. That's the chant that we opened this session with. We opened with Hinei beni uvencha. It was that. And I will come back to it. Shechinah.
I am bringing my history hat in, and I'm thinking about Greece in this time. If this stuff was written in like the 6th century or 5th century BCE and how normative it was in Greece for men to love men. And, it's in the same, it's like, what am I trying to say? We're kind of raised to believe this was so non-normative in that time, but what if it wasn't? What if it was normative in those cultures? And I don't know, it's just kind of like opening my mind to maybe the narrowness is all the intervening years, but not the time it was written in.
Right, because the text speaks about this not as something secretive or shameful or whatever. The tension, the star-crossed lovers tension of it is about Jonathan's father is King Saul, who wants to kill David to keep him from becoming king. Right? It's a Montague Capulet thing that's at issue, seemingly. But Torah talks about Jonathan's love for David freely. So it might be that it's not queer in the sense that, like, it was also normatively acceptable. Leah?
Yeah, I wanted to say something about the Adonai be between us. And it reminds me of the I thou posit, that what is between two people in that magical, in that wonderful moment of becoming sensitive to each other's being in that fantastic way. That's the I thou relationship. It's like the word witness isn't needed. I think it's.
I'd like to go even further. Because we're really getting to the end of our time. But I would like to go further with that. I would like to hold that particular covenant between David and Jonathan as something else, another way of talking about our connection with these texts, that there is a certain kind of aliveness, the Yud He Vav He, that means being, right? There's a certain being, a certain aliveness that exists between me and you, the text, you, the people in the text, ad olam, forever. There's an infinity of time that's wrapped up in this. So I would love to read that text itself as an invitation to, ahistoricity. I'm going to skip past Joseph because I've talked about Joseph so many times, and we're short on time, but the ways in which Joseph is described over and over during those chapters of Genesis in ways that only appear one other time in Torah and always referring to women. So there are things about Joseph's looks, there are things about the coat of many colors, the references to Joseph's womb, references to Joseph's childbearing knees. I'm happy to share my own materials on that with you all. If you want to look at that in greater depth, and I know a lot of you have looked at it with me before. But the last thing I want to just point out, say something about, are 3 prohibitions that we get in Deuteronomy and Leviticus. So the first one is about gender expression. Lo yechli gever al isha velo yilbash gever simlat isha ki toavat Adonai Elohecha kol oseh ele. A woman shall not wear men's gear, nor shall a man put on a woman's dress, for all who do so are abomination to Adonai, to Adonai your God. So I want to hold that for a moment and sort of the terribleness of that. Then male sexual intimacy, you shall not lie with men as with women, it is an abomination. And then a couple chapters later, if a man also lies with a man as he would with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination, they shall surely be put to death. Their blood shall be upon them. And the third one takes a little more explanation, but it's probably related to something queerness. But let's just hold these 2 for a moment. Because this is a place where we see ourselves pretty sharply. This is not something where we're trying to interpret, is this somehow about gender? Is it about gayness? Is it about queerness? It's right there. It's right there, and it's given the harshest penalty it can be given. So this is not a place where these are not mythic characters where we're trying to see ourselves. This is a law that is incredibly harsh and painful to look at because so many of us have experienced the kind of hate that exists in these laws. Some of us have seen these laws in our lives and finally saw them struck down at some point in the 1990s. And we see laws like these in other countries right now, where gay sex has a death penalty attached to it. So this is something that we can see and recognize and feel. What I want to hold here is several things. One is that I want to invite us to actually see the unnamed people of the era and milieu of Torah who are affected by this. The people who are queer and are frightened for their lives. The ones who leave the land of Israel in order to find a safer place, or the ones who meet each other in hiding. It's not hard to imagine that, and there must have been so many of them for these laws to arise, right? We would not have these laws if this weren't happening. So this is actually a kind of, these prohibitions are a documentation that we were there, that people very much like us, modern queer people very much like us were there. Then I would like to also hold that if we're going to let time work in a reciprocal way, that we allow ourselves to send healing to these people. Hine ya beni uvencha ad olam. I see you, queer people of the past, hounded by governments. And there's an aliveness between us. There's Yud-He Vav-He connecting us across time. I think by offering that healing, we also offer healing to Torah, because I honestly don't think that Torah likes having this story read year after year after year. That laws of such harshness, of such cruelty, that Torah wants that. And so in healing across time, we also are healing Torah itself. The words might be there, but we send love. Say, we know that you bear that scar, Torah. You bear that terrible tattoo. And we know that you carry it now against your will. Okay, Shechinah and Joanne.
That's so beautiful, Rabbi. And I'm just looking at the language of that last piece that you had up, and the Kedushah and the Kadesh. And it just came up in my study for this tonight. And my reading, Kadesh, Kedushah, is like a sacred prostitute. And that they're outlawing what they're calling the prostitutes in the temple. But what struck me is the word is holy, isn't it? Kadesh and Kadeshah.
Yeah.
So there's some kind of contradiction already in the text that I'm starting to see these as priests and priestesses in the temple, sexual priests or priestesses, and that there's something more going on.
There's a lot going on there. So yes, the Kadesh and Kadeshah seem to be priests in service of gods other than Adonai, and that Israelites should not become that. It has both a resonance of some kind of cultic sexual act. The Vulgate, the first Latin translation, calls the Kadeshim at first calls them scortator, which means fornicator, but then in other places it seems that it's really about gender, because in other places Kadeshim are called effeminati, and then also in the Aramaic translation of that bit of Torah, of that verse, of Israelite men shall not be Kadeshim and Israelite women shall not be Kadeshot, it says that an Israelite woman shall not be a working man, and an Israelite man shall not be a serving woman. So even though that's later, of course, the Aramaic, and then of course the Latin is later, but those readers bringing their time in were also seeing what you're seeing, Shechinah. We're also seeing this not just as don't be a priest of a different God. They were also seeing it as don't be a gender criminal.
Yeah, and I think there were things going on that maybe were considered holy and at an earlier time that got written over. Thank you so much.
Joanne?
Well, I do not have the advantage of having studied anything about this text, so I don't really want to comment on it because I think it requires more time, but I do want to comment at a higher level of something you said.
Yeah.
I think the Torah, for me, it only exists as a valid document because I get to re-examine it every week. And I'm having a blast doing it. I've been doing it for a year now, and I'm learning so much more when I don't get stuck on some of the words. And other times I do get stuck on the words, and I need to find out how that can work in the context of 2026 or whatever. So that's my comment about the whole thing. And perhaps we can study this some more in more depth, because my opinion on you telling me a few lines just wouldn't, it's not enough information. So Debarti.
Yeah, Shamati. I think, the very idea that we often say, that the Torah portion might be the same every year. You read the same cycle of the Torah is the same, but we're different. Like we say that, like that is, in itself is a statement about ahistoricity, right? It's like if I'm different and therefore Torah gives over a different meaning, then it means that Torah is still alive with me in the present. These stories are with me in the present. And then the next leap, of course, is are my prayers and blessings present to the Torah in the past? That's the question. Rita, I think I'm going to cut this off because we are after time, and is that okay?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Give it.
Really? Okay, I'll try to be succinct, really. Okay. Right before I decided I needed to embrace my Judaism, there was this talk about, Judaism is patriarchal and it's all about men and this and that and the other. I just had this thought that maybe the strict laws of men, human beings, encroached upon the more flexible laws of God. And this kind of harks back to what Shechinah was talking about, the time when it was kind of a matriarchal, patriarchal mix. Before it was, what's that word? Boldlerized? Did I say that word right? Anyway.
There's a beautiful book called Sarah. Sorry, I'm trying to type with one hand because I'm holding the shruti box. Sarah the Priestess.
Okay.
By Savina, right? Maybe Shechinah will misspellings.
Savina Toybal.
Teubal, Teubal.
who Judy Evanier studied with. And
Oh, really?
yeah.
Oh,
And
wow.
and you'll want to get that book, Rita, because it explicitly explores how, particularly the stories of Genesis, are a way of retelling the shift from a matriarchal to a patriarchal religion and the tensions in that, and what are the clues to that remain in our Torah text.
I love it.
Yeah, it's really an amazing read.
What a night. What a night this has been.
So I want to, before we move to our closing, I'm grateful to have Leah with me here for the closing. I would like to invite us now to look back to any of the Torah stories that touched you tonight, anything that moved you among us synchronously in this room or across time to the texts that we explored, and to sing to each other and to the figures of Torah, to the people whose stories are still touching us, to say, Hine ya beni uvencha ad olam, this liveliness, this beingness stretches from you to me. We continue to touch each other ad olam, regardless of time. Hine ya beni uvencha, Hine ya beni uvencha ad olam, ad olam. Hine ya beni uvencha, Hine ya beni uvencha ad olam, ad olam. Hine ya beni uvencha, Hine ya beni uvencha ad olam, ad olam, ad olam, ad olam. Thank you all.